Welcome to this trauma care webinar. My name's Tim Coates. I'm Professor of Emergency Medicine in Leicester and I'm Chair of the Trauma Care Charity. This evening we've got a presentation from Ross Fisher on how to do a presentation. I'd like first of all to say thank you to our sponsors, Slater and Gordon. The Trauma Care Charity is all about providing low cost, high quality education in trauma care. Without our sponsors, we can't do this for nothing, which is the grand total of what we charge for our webinars here. Slater and Gordon, they're interested in major trauma because they work with patients who've suffered injuries, particularly those that have insurance claims, and in particular try and get them really early rehabilitation. Before any claim has been settled, getting them into the system to get really early education. From Trauma Care, we have the usual disclaimer that you need to follow your own organisation's policies and procedures in practice, and what we're talking about in our seminars, you shouldn't put into practice if it's not what your own organisation thinks that you should be doing. The presenters can't see or hear you. The way to interact with us is through the Q&A option and the chat. If you're putting things in the chat, could you make sure that you're sending it to everybody? I think some people, when logging in, just go to hosts and panelists. If you change it to everybody, then everybody can see who you are. All Trauma Care members are going to automatically get a certificate at the after the webinar. And if you're not a Trauma Care member, why aren't you a Trauma Care member? You'll get an email which is inviting you to go online and for a few pounds buy a CPD certificate if you need one. Alternatively, you could just become a Trauma Care member and you get it for free. We're going to put the entire recording up on the website later. Very important date for your diaries, the 9th to the 12th. This is a 30th anniversary of the Trauma Care Charity, the 28th Annual Trauma Care Conference, going to be held in Yarnfield. The grand total of £75 per person for Trauma Care members. If you do the early bird registration, that's the best value trauma conference that you're going to find. 9th to the 12th of March next year. Hopefully be seeing you there. And if you want to become a Trauma Care member, this is how you do it. Costs of a couple of cups of coffee a month. Follow that QR code and join us. Learn all about what we're doing and get access to all of our educational materials and cheaper conferencing. Anyway, I'll move on from the advert section to what you've come here to hear, which is Ross Fisher talking about how to do a good trauma presentation. I hope that the first thing he's not going to do is to critique the introduction that I've just given, but let's wait and see. Ross, over to you.
So my name is Ross Fisher. I am an opinionated surgeon. I'm opinionated not just because I'm a surgeon, but because I've actually studied presentation skills for about the last 20 years. And what I would like to share with you is that as the science of trauma care has moved forward in the last 35 years, I'm hoping the science of presentation has also moved your presentations forward. I'll help you understand what that science is and give you some suggestions as to how you would deliver a better presentation. Because as in trauma management, science changes. And just because you're not aware of it doesn't mean that the science doesn't change. So, you know when it works and then doesn't work? Tim. All right, stop share. I'll share again. What I want you to consider is, what were you doing in 1993? Now, in 1993, this television program came out and was the leader in hospital emergency medicine and medical dramas. And many of us watched this agog at how a modern trauma service would work in Cook County Hospital in Chicago. And what I want you to consider is what has changed in the science of emergency medicine during your career to the point at which you are now? It may be that you've moved only a year or two forward and not much has changed. It may be like Tim and I, that you were around fresh-faced and enthusiastic in 1993, wearing a white coat, believing that you could go out and change the world. But think about what was happening for you in your career and how science has changed how you deliver emergency medicine. It might be one of the obvious things that we've stopped wearing white coats and most of us are wearing scrubs. It might be such things as the use of tranexamic acid. It might be that we've stopped putting everyone in a cervical collar if they have even mentioned that they've fallen over. But what I want you to consider is that science what has moved emergency care forward to the point at which the doctor on the left-hand side, fresh-faced and youthful, has now become this doctor working in the pit. It's the same actor, different doctor, but he is now applying the science of emergency medicine in a way that it wasn't applied when he was the medical student John Carter in Chicago. Moving on from that, what I want you to do is to interact with me as much as possible. Now, you can't speak to me, you can shout at me and tell me that I'm wrong, but I won't hear it. But what I would like you to do is get a pen and paper and write down the answer to this question. What is the purpose of presentations? Now, I will give you a space because I actually believe in the value of interactive education. And if you're just sat there thinking, yeah, I've got better things to do, you're already showing part of what the issue is with online presentations is the social mores are different and that you don't feel you need to interact. But my suggestion to you is that if you get a pen and paper, this will change your life. What is the purpose of a presentation, whether it's a trauma case, a research case, or a keynote? What is the purpose of presentations? What is the purpose of presentations? And each of us will have an answer, and none of those are wrong. But what I want you to consider is, what do you think the purpose is of a presentation if you are the presenter, and then if you are the audience? Oops. And then what happens? Oh. Technology is fantastic, isn't it? The first question I had is, what is the purpose of a presentation? And for many of us, we believe that is the transfer of information or knowledge. But then I want you to answer the next question that the slide slipped over is, do presentations deliver that? Do presentations deliver what you expect of presentations? Because I think in the calm and stillness of the room in which you're in, rather than being face to face with a presenter, and maybe if we're being honest with ourselves, we might start to wonder if presentations do actually deliver what we hope for from them. That whilst there may be an interaction goes on, whilst there may be a delivery of information, it's not really as efficient as we'd like it to be. And then the next question which came up was, why not? Why don't presentations deliver the knowledge, the training, the education, the inspiration, the enthusiasm that we're looking for? And there are a multiplicity of answers to that involve tiredness, poor presenters, bad lighting, slides which are complex, all sorts of things. But what I want you to realize is that fundamentally, the reasons that presentations don't work is science. And that there is a huge amount of science supporting the reasons why presentations don't work. And whilst we all may have our opinion about how this should be done and who should do it and in what way, what I want you to do is ask yourself, is this just your opinion or is this science-based? Now, for the last 15 years, I have been studying presentations. I know I should get out and do more interesting things, but I have come up with some simple thoughts about presentations, which have dramatically changed the way I deliver presentations. And I am proud and humble in accepting that many people have also listened to what is being said and started to change the way that they deliver presentations. And that has impacted the delivery of education. Now, the first thing that I came up with some 15 years ago was the simple idea that a presentation is made up of three parts: a presentation, a presentation, and a presentation. The first presentation is the message, whatever it is that you, as the presenter, want to deliver to the audience. That may be the use of tranexamic acid in head injury patients. That may be a keynote message about inspiration, and that may be the third quarter business problem that your department are facing and how you need to address it. The message, what it is that you, as the presenter, want to give to the audience. The second presentation is the supportive media, whatever it is that is beside you or to the side of you or on the screen, the PowerPoint, if that's what you're using. The supportive media to your presentation, that is the message. And the third part is the delivery of that. P1 is your message, P2 is the media, and P3 is the delivery. And if you put that together, it comes up with actually a very simple formula that the value of any presentation is the product of the message, the supportive media, and the delivery. And that's what I call the P cubed value of a presentation. And the most important thing about that is it's not how wonderful I think I am, how amazing I think my slides are, or how eloquently I deliver it. It's what do you think? Because if you are confused, if you are tired, if you are bored, if you don't like me, then the value of my presentation will fail because of a multiplicity of reasons. The value of a presentation is the product of the message, the media, and the delivery in the view of individual audience members. Now, when it comes, this gives us a useful structure for when it comes to addressing presentations. But the reasons that presentations fail can be split up into these simple constructs: message, media, and delivery. And the first reason that presentations fail is that the message is not constructed and delivered appropriately. Now, whilst I can, and if you want, I will deliver you hundreds of references that allow you to go and scientifically prove this, I want you to think right now about the last presentation you were at and simply remember three key points. I can see Tim sat back there and shaking his head. The simple answer is that the vast majority of us cannot even remember the presentation, let alone three facts from it. And that may be a keynote message. That may be a central and fundamental part of your education as an emergency medicine practitioner. It may be the most important lecture you have ever been to in life, and you can't even remember it, let alone three messages from that. And that is not your fault. That is down to science. Because the simple science shows us that we do not download information like our laptops or phones do. We do not download a program and store it in the back of our head such that we can then access that information. And yet, as educators and audience members, we sit there believing that we can. We are not computers. And the reason you can't remember those facts is not because you're stupid, not because you didn't care. It might be. Not because the presenter didn't care. It might be, but because of science. We simply do not have a USB bolt in the back of our head that allows the presenter to plug in the USB, download the information, and 45 minutes later, I know cardiac physiology. It simply doesn't work like that. And yet, this is how we deliver presentations. A massive list of information that the presenter will reel off and we will read with them and retain precisely what you think you got from that last lecture. And the worst thing is you sat there and you nodded, you went along with it, you believed it made sense, and it did make sense at that point. But the facts are that you can remember three things. Three things, if you are paying attention. 7, if you concentrate really, really hard. But those 7 are at the expense of everything else. And the reasons presentations fail is because of the nature of the construct and delivery of the message. We are not computers. We do not download like computers. And yet, that's how we construct the message. That's how we deliver it. And that's how we sit in the audience. Presentations fail because the message is constructed wrongly. Now, beyond that, the supportive media actively inhibits your learning. I'll say that one more time. The supportive media, that's the PowerPoint, actively inhibits your learning. PowerPoint is bad. It's a really simple fact. The reason that people use it, I have no idea. But PowerPoint actively inhibits your learning. And this comes down to two very simple scientific principles. The first is called cognitive load. Now, if you need to do something complex, what you want to do is minimize the inputs that are coming to you. If you need to study, you would not study in the middle of the emergency department whilst there's chaos going on around you, people shouting and screaming, and that's just the staff, at the same time as trying to study for an exam. You want to be able to focus. And yet the supportive media directly conflicts with your ability to focus on what is being said to you, because we cannot read and listen at the same time. They are two different cognitive processes. Some of our amazing colleagues are already speaking English as a second language and listening to this presentation. They're doing three things at once: listening, translating, and trying to process. And that simply doesn't work. We don't have the bandwidth to do that. Now, that's a huge summary of part of the problem of what happens whenever someone puts up a complex slide. And for some of you, you are actually trying to read the slide on the right-hand side of that screen. It means nothing to you, but we are attracted to text. The second thing is what's called dual processing. Now, if I put up a slide that says dual processing and I talk about dual processing, that works for you to understand what's going on. But because we can read faster and quicker and more effectively than the speaker can speak, if there is more than one line on the screen, we will read ahead. And so we're not having dual processing. We are back to the issue of cognitive load. We're overwhelming the brain's ability to think. Now, what therefore happens is that most audience members will prioritize one over the other. And usually that comes down to reading. And what we do is we focus on the screen and we read the stuff that's up there, and we blank out that annoying Scotsman who is boring on about whatever he thinks is important, and I focus on what I want. And that is why more people want more text on the slide so they can read it. Do you know what the most efficient way is of transferring large volumes of data from one person to another? It's a document, and that is why people put it on the screen. But there is no point going to a presentation simply to read it. There isn't enough space on the screen to put everything up there. You can't read it before the annoying person changes over to the next thing, and you are trying to focus on the annoying guy talking over there at the same time as all of this is happening. This is a simple summary of why the supportive media actively inhibits your learning. Now, in the back of your head, you've got all sorts of questions going, yes, but, yes, but, yes, but. And what I want you to do is address that with science, not just the belief that you know better. If we can go back to what John Carter was holding in his hand at that very first slide, he had a 2-liter bag of saline. And that is how we used to resuscitate trauma patients. 40 mils per kilo of saline before we did anything else. And we know now that we were drowning our patients. We might get the numbers up to look like something that was useful, but we were perfusing them with salty water that brought on the trauma triad rather than protected them or treated them in any way. Supportive media actively inhibits your learning. Now, the third thing is the nature of delivery. An easy way to do this is I want to ask you, are you all still paying attention to me? Or are some of you out there now doing your ironing, or you're washing at the same time, or getting a glass of wine? Because it is really difficult in the online milieu to continue to pay attention. In a lecture theatre, there are slightly more important social cues. But if I sit here and pick my nose at the same time as talking to you, the message remains the same, but is devalued because of what's happening to you. If it ends up with me drifting off the screen and you not able to see anything, or staring across here, or having you look up my nostril, as we often do in presentations, the value falls even although the message is exactly the same. And there are multiple simple psychological clues that show us how that value is lost. Standing behind a lectern, speaking in, when you come back and hear what you're saying all the time, being utterly terrified. All of these simple things devalue the message, which is already poorly constructed, poorly supported, and now poorly delivered. The science of presentations is clear that what we do in virtually every single presentation causes it maybe not to fail, but really not to be as good as it could be. If you think back to the trauma management that you started with and how you have progressed now, it's those leaps that we could be making by the application of science. Recognizing that in the construction of a message, we need to think differently. In the supporting of that message with supportive media or not, we need to think differently. And in the delivery of that, we need to think differently. The science is clear. It always has been. Your ignorance of it does not change that fact. They firmly believed that delivering large volumes of saline, crystalloid, or even colloid, let's not go there, was essential to the management of trauma care patients. And now things have changed. I'll come back to the science, but what I want to do is stop at this point and take some questions on that, because it's in understanding that the science shows us that this is a problem that we will then be able to move on. And please, if you've got questions about how do we do that, that's great. That's how education works. You have already led yourself to that point. But if you have challenges to it, please bring me the science, not just I can't see any other way to do it, because that's what I'm here to help you with and direct you towards resources that will help you. So put questions into the chat and Professor Coates will interpret and be my quizmaster.
Thank you. While everyone is hopefully typing their questions, could I just ask about complex pictures?
Yep.
Because I'm seeing quite a lot now of AI generated pictures in slides that have got all sorts of little jokes or little nuances in it. And although the sort of theory has been don't put lots of words, put a picture, it just seems to me that those complex pictures are just as distracting as a whole bunch of text. I don't know if you've seen the same trend or what you
Well,
think there.
complex pictures have always been complex pictures, and their complexity attracts us. That's why we like it. Because it's a bit complex online, I've not been able to blank out my slides as I went along. But I am sure that that image that I left up for the last 10 minutes, people have started to interpret and wonder what the conference is, wonder why the guy on the left is there, wonder why half the seats are empty. So that if we have an image that beyond 3 seconds, we start to interpret, when then we start to ask questions about it. Our brain is interested. And in that interest, we're no longer focused at the message that we're supposed to be looking at. And a complex image, if it's AI generated, has got hundreds of thousands of bits in it that are annoying. And if they're annoying, they're distracting, whether it's counting the number of fingers or wondering why the stethoscope has two ends that are exactly the same. Those sorts of AI generated idiocies are the things that we then become interested in rather than the use of tranexamic acid in head injuries.
So that sort of comes on to Danny's question there, which is, are we better to use pictorial slides than text?
Yes. Or the slide that I'm using now, which is I call the best slide in the world. If you turn everything off, people literally have to focus. They have to focus on me, maybe what's around me, because it's slightly interesting, but they are actually listening. Whereas as soon as I do this and something comes up, then we're wondering about what's the font? How did I get that USB bolt in the back of his head? Why has he got head shaved? It's amazing how distracting a simple image is. So we can use images to aid us in our uh, media that supports, but be clear that even simple images, if left up for a long time, can become exceptionally distracting.
Yeah. I think there's a few questions here around the theme that your audience is quite diverse.
Mhm.
Your audience has different ways of learning, different preferred strategies, has neurodivergence within the audience. How
Okay,
much does the sort of the simple rules apply to everybody?
simple rules apply to everybody because we are actually very, very similar. And I don't want to disrespect anyone who is neurodivergent or hard of hearing or dyslexic or anything like that. But to get to this point in our careers as physicians of paramedics, medics, consultants, nurses, doctors, whatever, is we are what are called blended learners. And there's a lot of falsehood, particularly in so-called medical education, about learning styles. Do you know there is this much evidence to support the concept of learning styles? Learning styles do not exist. They only exist in the mind of medical educators. We are blended learners. So, yes, some of us like to listen, some of us like to do, some of us like to write. But the evidence that there is only one way that this will work is completely non-existent. Our colleagues who are neurodivergent have issues, but they maybe like to have to minimize the bandwidth or stop noise or things like that. But they are good listeners. They may be good readers, and there are things that we like to do, but trying to cope with everybody and do everything for everybody is useless. That's be the same as speaking 452 languages, and recognize that the adult learner actually is very experienced at focusing and picking out the key things for them in the way that they like, and adding complexity to that, whether they are dyslexic, poor hearing, neurodivergent, or just lazy, actually makes it worse. Lots of text, lots of images, lots of noise just makes it worse. It's like people have said to me, what is the best font for dyslexics? And you just go, you want to run that by me one more time? Ask a dyslexic what font they like, and they will say, I like you to talk to me, not put things in text. It's silliness that we are doing retrofitting to make things better.
Yeah. There's a really neat sort of concept here from Louisa, which is around, if you're talking to a clinical audience, um, clinicians like being put, you're trying to change their behavior in their working place, well, actually putting them mentally into their working place by giving a case presentation. Is that a good way of then getting them into the right frame of mind to absorb the message that you're trying to
Yes,
give?
yes. None of us do that though.
Mm,
Because when you're on call, Tim, you have your registrar phone you up and say, Professor, I've got this patient here. He's a 55-year-old male, road traffic accident, high velocity impact, unconscious at the scene. He speaks to you.
mm,
You put that up on a screen and people, they'll stand to read it. You put up a blood gas on the screen and people will be wondering why the lactate is 1.4 when they're expecting it to be 1.2. Where actually, if you just read it out to people and we process like we do the majority of the time, face to face or on the telephone, actually you process differently. And this idea that putting things on the screen allows people to think, it actually inhibits their thinking because it causes conflict and it makes it harder for people to do that. So, yes, I completely agree. If we're going to do a clinical case, present it in a clinical way and say, here is a picture of the road traffic accident. Then we're in the room. Now we can see the high velocity impact. If we're going to talk about a 60-year-old male, put a picture up of a 60-year-old male. And then we can look at it because some of us think 60-year-old males are old and frail. I know I am not quite as old and frail as some people think I should be, but give us an impression. Is this guy pushing a walker around, or is he cycling most weekends? Does he go to the gym and isn't hugely overweight and smoking? Then we're in the zone and we can start to think about it. Yes, images help, and we can use our voice to convey that, because all of us now are thinking about that 60-year-old trauma case where putting up a list 60-year-old male road traffic accident, we would all have ignored it.
Look, Ross, we're still getting some questions coming through, but maybe we should go on to the second bit and sort of amalgamate them at the
Exactly.
end. That would, I
Yep.
think, would be good. Yeah.
Okay, so what I shared with you is the science of why this stuff fails. And what I want to do is share with you the obvious thing about how we might apply the science that would make a difference to that. If we are unable to download tons of information, what we should simply do, therefore, is give people key information. Now, that is complex, and I cannot, in a 20 minutes slot, explain to you how you would do that for your organization. But if what I often challenge people is that if someone says, give me a 45-minute lecture on use of tranexamic acid in head injuries, and then I said to you, you only have 3 minutes to do that talk, what would you then strip it down to? Rather than say, well, I can't, I need to speak for 45 minutes to not know who I am, actually realize what is key. What is key? What is the one underlying message that you want people to take from that? And then use 3 key points to support that so that your audience, once they go away, if they can remember those 3 key points and your key message, will be able then to reconstruct or ask appropriate questions about what's going on. If you give them 42 different causes of hypokalemia in a trauma patient, trust me, they'll remember the weird one and something else and then struggle for the rest of it and have no concept about how to manage that hypokalemia in a trauma patient. So realize that they have a limited bandwidth, that they want one key message, and support that with 3 key facts. When it comes to supportive media, if we are going to be distracted by huge amounts of text on a screen and everybody hates it, don't put it on the screen. Now, the reasons that we put stuff on the screen are complex and multiple and usually false and retrofitted. I put references up because people need to know I'm using references. No, they don't. You just put them up because everybody else puts them up. And if everyone else was being racist, would you be racist? No, you wouldn't. You've got insight into that. So try and have insight into the I just do it because everyone else does. If you want people to have the references, give them a download, give them a QR code, make it instantly available so they can focus and listen to what's going on and not be distracted by taking photographs and then just checking what their email is. And oh, I've got a WhatsApp and oh, where are you? Because people will just disappear. Rationalize what's going on and use memes. What you're looking at now is the USB bolt in the back of this guy's head, and you're remembering that you are not like that. That's not what human beings are. And so we can use those even in a cheesy way. If it works for people to remember there are 3 drugs that you give in a rapid sequence induction, then who cares? If it works, rather than listing the 42 ones, 72 different complications, and which order you should put them in, I remember the 3 drugs. That is how education works. So think about what you hate. And actually, what you'll find is the reason you hate that stuff in a presentation as an audience member is because of science. And then think about delivery. Think about if you're online, you need to have decent lighting. You need to be looking at the camera, not way off here and concentrating on something else, even if that's your notes. You need to engage with the audience and have some passion and enthusiasm, because, dear Lord, if you don't, how would you expect them to do so? I'm terribly sorry. I got sent here to deliver this lecture. I know you're bored. I'm bored, but let's just get through. We've all been there, haven't we? The lecturer doesn't care, so why should we care? And the real sadness for me is that mostly we have come to expect so very little from presentations as an audience. And there, as a presenter, you realize you can meet that level of mediocrity. And so we deliver, and everyone's happy because we get out of there alive, off the stage without dying, and somehow we believe that that's education. Passion and enthusiasm, yes, even if it's just for an audit topic, engages your audience. And that is where the message will be transferred. Because if you have none, the message will die. It really is relatively straightforward, but a nice way of summarizing it, if you have an educational background, is what's called Bloom's taxonomy. Now, for most of us, when I asked you what presentations are supposed to deliver, we believed it was knowledge. Now, knowledge is useful, but knowledge in itself is just facts. And that's like you teaching me about emergency medicine with a ton of facts. I'm a pediatric surgeon. Some of it might be useful. It's not really where I spend most of my time. And so the value of that knowledge is not what it would be if you were teaching an emergency medicine paramedic. The knowledge needs more than that. It needs to be brought through to understanding. What does this mean for my trauma patient? If I give TXA to a patient with a head injury, what does this mean? How is it going to affect them? It's not just a drug, that's the knowledge. We can give TXA to head injury patients, but it has an implication. Now, my understanding is variable, whether I am experienced paramedic, been in the field for 20 years, or a first-year general surgical resident. Different energy, different knowledge level, different application. And it's about making that relevant for our audience. And that can be a challenge, but that's the skill of a presenter. Because in that, you're then offering for your audience to analyze what that means. Your paramedic is going to be in the field thinking, should I give TXA to this patient because he has only a serious head injury and no evidence of any other abdominal injuries? I know that there's an implication for this. The general surgeon has no clue. He's just giving TXA to everyone. So his analysis is different because he doesn't have that understanding. And so that's where you, as the lecturer, can lead them through understanding what the implications might be. Are you aware that there's a different trial beyond CRASH 2, which may have implications for what's going on? Because in that, we will then have the evaluation of what those individuals will do with that new knowledge. I should give TXA in this situation. I shouldn't in this. And in this one, I'm confused. I'm not certain, but I'm going to ask because Professor Coates has given me this instruction and helped me understand that there is more to this than simply give TXA. And lastly, you then have the change in practice. Now, if you go back to presentations that you're used to, the knowledge at the very bottom of all of this is that 3210 that you remember from the presentation. If you don't remember anything that's gone on, apart from the fact that Karim Brohi was, he's in London somewhere, isn't he? He's that nice guy, tall, slightly, you're lost. It has no value than you just remember the guy's name. Your understanding of the use of TXA in trauma and therefore head injury patients is virtually useless. Your analysis of what to do is, it's a drug, should we give that? Your evaluation is probably useless, and you are not the person I want to be making decisions about this trauma patient with a serious head injury and no abdominal trauma and whether they should or should not have TXA. That is why presentations fail. This is Bloom's taxonomy, and what we should do is lead our audience through that. Give them new knowledge, yes. Help them understand what that new knowledge means so that they can then start to do some analysis for them as individuals in their sphere of experience and work. Evaluate what that might mean. It may mean just asking more questions, it may mean more reading. It may mean, I am not going to do that again. And ultimately, it's a change in practice that you have achieved. This is Bloom's taxonomy. This is what learning is, and this is what we're after in a presentation. Back to you, Professor.
And back to the audience for more questions, please. While you're writing, there's a question about the use of humor. Does that work? Does that enhance engagement and learning? I can think of a couple of people, and people say, "Oh, they're such great presenters. I was laughing all whole way through."
Everything has value.
Mm.
And you can also destroy your credibility and your value in one throwaway comment.
Mm.
So I coach presentations, I run workshops, and I'd be very happy to come to your place and help whoever you are if you feel that that would be of value, whether it's Manitoba or Saudi Arabia and everyone in between. I think one has to be very careful with humor. Don't start off with a joke. It's just not going to work. If you're going to use humor, my best advice is self-deprecating because if I can laugh at me, you can laugh at me. Do not point at the general surgeons and say they're all bloody idiots, aren't they? Let's all laugh together because they may be. I'm a general surgeon, but you can be sure as eggs that there's somebody out there who's then offended or offended on their behalf, and you've lost the whole audience. Putting up random cartoons just to break the ice, they're random cartoons. They don't break the ice, they just upset people. And often people feel patronized. So be careful, be very careful.
Interesting comment here about whether a whiteboard or even chalk and blackboard is actually a sort of better way than using a pre-prepared PowerPoint slide.
I think it's
What are your
very
thoughts on
interesting.
that?
And
That's a good question.
I've certainly seen it done. The The reason that we struggle with that is that what we often end up doing is having a very complex whiteboard behind us, which is
Mm,
as equally distracting.
mm,
One needs to be clear about the purpose of the supportive media that we're using. And if you are putting it up there so that people can then write down the information, it's probably better done by actually just giving them the information, whether that is, the reference or something. One can construct a complex diagram, but I am sure none of us, not one of us, even you, Professor, can write out the clotting cascade. And yet we've studied it for years. So having it on the board, it just makes us feel foolish. And if you get it wrong, be sure that that's what people will see. You've missed out factor seven over there, haven't you? And so you just have to be careful. The reason we have pre-prepared ones is so we don't have to do too much thinking. But yes, I think it's valuable if you can come up with the 3 points. Here are the three things we need to remember in trauma patients. And the key to all of this is don't let them get cold, whatever,
yeah.
that's useful. But be careful that what we don't end up with is a complex image that people are then left trying to interpret your handwriting, because most of ours is poor, that you've got enough space, or that what was clear to you in all of this suddenly becomes just a mass of waving arms and nobody knows what on earth is going on unless they've been there the whole time. Because remember, what you think you understand is not necessarily what an audience member will understand by what you've drawn.
Mm, okay. Um, if you were doing a 20-minute presentation
Yep.
that was on something that was not a presentation you've given before, how long would you sort of set aside in your diary to prepare that, do you think?
It's a good question, and the answer is complex, as in all of these things. The answer depends on who's in the audience. So I had a 5-minute presentation to give for my consultant interview. It took me probably about 20 hours to put the whole thing together.
Mm,
I also know that I've virtually guaranteed myself the job by the clarity of thought and the nature of delivery. If you're teaching 5 colleagues, then 20 hours for that doesn't seem reasonable. If you're giving a keynote presentation at an international congress where they don't know who you are, but somebody's invited you because they think you're impressive, you need to be moving back into that ballpark.
mm,
My top tip is there are 3 parts to it, and most of us have spent most of our time just putting the effort into our slides. Actually, you should probably spend 1/3 on each part if you're any good at that. That's 1/3 on the message and the construct, 1/3 on the supportive media, and 1/3 practicing your delivery. Because people, what you're saying, you forget what's going on. You've done the amazing preparation. Practice is what most people don't do, because most people will say, how hard is it to read out my slides? It's not
mm.
hard. It's not valuable. So 1/3 of each of what you're putting together. Consider how important this is to you. It may be that it's going to get you your job. It may be it's simply a journal club. That changes everything. But 1/3 for each part.
There's a question about accents, dialects, and what do you do differently if the audience doesn't speak the same language that as a first language that you do?
Um, I have studied this and traveled the world and present to
Mm,
different people. The first thing for our foreign colleagues who have come to this country, our international medical graduates, is that we love you speaking our language. And whilst you may feel embarrassed or ashamed that your English is not perfect, we give you huge respect for doing that. So don't you be worrying about what we think about what's going on. So that if you have come from anywhere where English was not your first language, it's okay. Speak slowly and clearly and be passionate, and people will love you for that. They are not looking for my perfect English. If I am taking my perfect English or Scottish to another country, speak more slowly. Do not put text up on the screen because people will then be stuck trying to either read or listen at the same time, and that's really hard. But respect your audience because most of us, I speak French badly, but I can listen to it actually quite well. If you put text up, I'll be confused. Speak slowly, and people will get most of what it is, and have only one key word, not line, not message, not sentence, to help people along, and people will work with that. And respect the fact that if your audience has come to listen to you, their English is good enough. You don't speak like British people do to foreigners by patronizing them in stupid language. That's just crazy. And yet so many people do it. So apologies if that has ever happened to you.
There's a question here about the sort of new interactive tools that are around. I'm calling them new. That's my age, isn't it? Slido and Mentimeter and similar for
Yep.
audience interaction. Do
Well,
you
they
use?
have
What do you
value.
think of those?
They have value and they also have cost. The first cost is that they take a significant amount of technology. And one of the big problems you will have is if you don't have great Wi-Fi and people don't have good digital data connection, you can lose half your audience who can't interact with you.
Hmm.
The second thing is, as soon as people get their phone out, oh, I've just got a text message here, and as soon as they've got their phone, you've lost them. Think of what you are trying to achieve. Now, if you just want people to say, yes, I give blood and tranexamic acid to all my trauma patients, then go for a show of hands. You'll get actually more impact by people going, yeah, I'm with you, Professor. That's what I do. But also remember that in that, and whether it's Mentimeter or a show of hands, you may get people who are disenfranchised or embarrassed by the fact when you say, hands up those who don't give TXA to trauma patients. Oh shit. And you can embarrass people. And people are just as embarrassed online with Mentimeter or whatever, where 999 of people are doing this one thing, and there's one poor guy going, oh my word. And he knows who he is. You don't know who he is, but he or she feels embarrassed. So, what are you trying to achieve? Because the last thing is, if you're trying to achieve something by going, look, everybody does A and the whole audience does B, your whole talk is now crashing out of the sky at a pace which is terrifying. And you've got a long way back from that. So, what is the value that you're trying to achieve? What is the cost involved in doing it? And can everyone be involved? Because we need our phone, we need it turned on, we need data, and we also actually possibly need to have a mobile phone, which not everybody does. So you may be disenfranchising people.
Uh, so another thought here around the value of pre-reading. Should we be trying to give pre-reading to our audience so that they're in the right cognitive state to be thinking about the message?
Simple educational theory is that if we pre-read, then as an audience, we know more and we're more engaged.
Hmm.
simple, realistic fact is nobody pre-reads, nobody cares, and most people turn up expecting you to plug the bolt into the back of their head. So
Yeah.
the answer is yes, that would be great because then your audience would be engaged. They would have opinions, they would have thoughts. They would go, wait a second, I have a question related to your first article. I'm not sure that the control group is, and that is education. But most of us, because of our bad experiences in the past, either as educators or audience members, realize there's no value in that because the boring old Scottish guy is just going to ramble on. It doesn't matter what I think, and I don't really care because I'm going to read about it later. Yes, of course, we should pre-read and encourage people to engage and have opinions and discuss things.
Yeah. It starts me thinking about, trauma care as an organization. We are putting on conferences. What do you think do the conference organizers have a role in improving the quality of presentations?
We absolutely do. We absolutely do. And it's something I am very happy to help with. It's very labor intensive. But the first thing to say to people is the presentation that we expect from you should be succinct, have a key message, and your supportive media should do just that. So that if the slides go out, could you still continue to talk? And if you can't, then you're just reading your slides. But then we need to help people because we can't chuck them out the airplane and expect them not to have a parachute. So we have to help them and show them that there are ways to go. There are conferences and organizations that do that. SMAC, some of us have memories of. That was a wonderful disruptive educational approach. For the pediatrics people amongst us, the Don't Forget the Bubbles group, I worked with them and many other doctors to help people improve their presentations, and the audiences loved it. The engagement was massive. The learning was huge. The reward was worth it. The input is significant. It takes humility on the part of a presenter who may have presented this way for 30 years to say, I am willing to change. I'm willing to listen and understand what's going on because my message has value. And that's what this is about. This is not about me. This is not about just people wearing roll neck tops and drinking espresso. This is about the application of science so that your message is heard and then enacted. And that's what these conferences are about. So, yes, if we could get organizers to say, we need to think differently, we need to help our presenters, we need to give them education and support, your congresses will dramatically change. Your audiences will love you, their learning will be massive, and the care of patients, which is what this is all about, will improve. Yes.
Thank you. I think we probably do one. Let's do a last question here.
Yep.
You can blame Justin Lane for this. So he's asking, what's the most memorable PowerPoint presentation that you've ever attended? And has there been a particular presentation that you can talk about that really has sort of changed your mind about the way to present?
I've seen lots of excellent presentations, and I'm privileged to have been part of the SMAC community where we saw great educators take great effort to deliver amazing messages. One of the simple answers to that question is I saw a professor who turned up to give his message and his slides died. They just could not get the computer to work. And so he just shut the laptop and said, let me talk to you. And we spent an hour in the presence of wisdom and intellect and passion and humility. And he shared his stories. And that was it. So there was nothing up there. It was just that man sharing his thoughts. And that's what people love. And actually, that I think is the way forward. That so much of what causes us grief is on the slides. I think they're over there, aren't they? And that's where we run aground. And actually realizing that they're only there to support us rather than be our message. That's the best way forward.
Ross, I think that is a great message and a great place to end.
Well, wait a
As you
second,
can,
because
hmm?
I've got a finishing bit. Can
Oh,
I?
I'm sorry. In that case,
All right.
please go ahead. I thought you were winding up there.
No, no, I'm winding up, but I'm
Oh,
wound up most of the time. Let me just move on through because there is also a little example at the end. Um, the first thing to say is that I fully understand that no one is going to change their presentations on the basis of what they've heard. What I'm hoping is that you have been challenged, that you understand that there is an issue about what's going on, that the things that you dislike or find problematic, as my phone telling me it's time to stop in 5 minutes, those are your brain actually responding to the science of why there is a problem. And when I run workshops and lectures, and if you want me to come to your place of work, please get in contact. There is a film called The Matrix, 1999. The film is, it's quite old, but if you watch it, it talks about virtual realities. And I believe that we live in a world of a virtual reality where we believe that reading out PowerPoint somehow is teaching, or that sat there listening to PowerPoint being read out is learning. And in that film, Morpheus says to Neo, the world is not as you perceive it, and you have to make a choice. And he offers Neo the choice of two pills. He says you can take the blue pill and go on believing the world is as you see it. You'll wake up tomorrow and everything will be the same. And with respect, if you disagree with what I've said, that's fine. You'll wake up tomorrow and you'll go on reading out PowerPoint and sit there listening and believing that you're learning. But the other option is that you can take the red pill. And if you take the red pill, I can help you. I can direct you towards resources and ideas that will change your world forever and the message that you deliver, and therefore the education. And that is my challenge to us. This is a QR code. If you scan that, copy it, print the screen, or whatever you can do, it will download for you straight away, no viruses, no link, no cost, a workbook that will allow you to work through how you might consider to do a presentation. It will also take you to a website. I have a free website with resources that you can use and questions that you can ask that will help you consider some of these issues. But if you find this useful, then please get in touch. It is in the application of science that we are going to make a difference in presentations. In the same way, we have stopped giving people 2 liters of saline in every trauma patient. We have stopped holding the necks of everybody and started considering the use of POCUS and the use of tranexamic acid and the different use of our approach to medicine that will deliver different care. We need to change our message so that it's identifiable, simple, and memorable. We need our media to be supportive, not distracting, not confusing, and we need our delivery to be passionate, to be persuasive, to be enthusiastic. Because in that, we will end up with the change in medicine that will deliver the change in education and the change in care. This is a simple trauma presentation that I can show you is a way that you might consider doing it. It was done in a way previously, like I could show you, but this is how you might consider it differently. Simple audit project. Pediatric blunt abdominal trauma is scary. It's scary for those affected by it and for those of us who have to manage it. One of the issues that we're most concerned about is hidden injuries, if you like, monsters in the closet. And for that reason, many of us use CT as an imaging tool to diagnose every single injury, which is reasonable until you understand that a simple abdominal CT in a child, and that's what I'm a specialist in, is 250 chest x-rays worth of radiation, just because I'm worried about monsters in the closet. The PCARN group in North America have a positive predictive tool that allows us, if using that tool, to reduce the amount of radiation that we expose children to by identifying those children who have a true requirement for CT. At Sheffield Children's Hospital, a pediatric major trauma centre, we retrospectively reviewed our use of CT imaging over a 4-year period. We had 100 trauma CTs that were undertaken, of which 94 were correctly predicted by the PCARN criteria. 4 patients did not have prediction according to that trial. However, they had hematuria, which is not one of the PCARN criteria. There were 2 remaining patients who had no clinical indication for CT imaging, but They were removed from a vehicle in which there were two fatalities. Therefore, 100% of our trauma imaging was for appropriate indications. There are monsters in the closet, and not all of them are scary. This one, however, is real. 500 trauma CTs will lead to one malignancy. We need to be aware of this monster in the closet. So it's not about no radiation. It's not about simple guidelines, but the application of clinical acumen. If you like, as little as reasonably appropriate. The Alara principle. He wants to know what you think. He wants to know, are you going to change? Thank you, Professor Coates. Thank you to all my colleagues out there. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for being allowed to stimulate and challenge people. It's 9 o'clock. I finished on time.
Thank you so much, Ross. You can see from the applause, the thumbs up that's coming there, the comments that are coming, as always, a really impactful presentation,
Thank you.
really making people think. And absolutely great messages for us to take away, and maybe something there actually for trauma care as an organization as well. So
I can help.
yeah, that is great. Um, Tom, could we switch back to the main message slides just for a couple of other points? Thank you very much to everyone that attended. These webinars don't work unless you come. They also don't work unless you ask questions. There's some great interaction there through the through the chat. Um, I'm getting distracted by all these messages coming up by people saying that their next presentation is going to be different. I like that. That's good. Um, the Remember, if you become a trauma care member, then you get a lot more of this sort of stuff. You get it either free or reduced price. Just scan the QR code. There was a couple of questions about the QR code in Ross's presentation of people that didn't get their cameras out in time. I'll try and get Tom to put that into the email that will come round afterwards, or you can wait for this to come up on our website and our YouTube channel when you can pause at that point and take the QR code to Ross's workbook. Besides, thank you all for joining. We are doing these once a month. There will be publicity about next month's coming out in the next week or so. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being here in the evening. And I think we'll close there. Thank you again to Ross for a great presentation. Good night.